Hello and welcome to another episode of the Cover 2 podcast. I'm Jared Smith.
I'm Nenad.
And on today's show, we've got a lot going on for you. A very diverse show today.
Of course, yeah.
We're going to start off with some college football talk as the season officially starts this Saturday as number 8 Florida takes on in-state rival unranked Miami. We're going to talk about the Lakers and with the injury to DeMarcus Cousins, what that means for the Lakers roster and who they should sign to replace the former All-Star. And we're going to end the show with a little rapid-fire segment, some NFL questions that Nick and I are going to pose to each other to get you ready for Week 3 of the preseason and prepare you guys for next week's episode when we do an NFL predictions show.
Yeah, it's going to be a big show next week.
Yeah, so a lot to get to. Let's jump right into it, Nick. College football is set. We're about to get underway. Finally, guess what, Nick? From now, this upcoming weekend until February, we are going to have football, whether it is high school, collegiate, or professional. I can't wait. I'm excited. I currently have the rankings right now up. We have Clemson at number 1. Clemson has never been ranked number 1 in their history as a football program. So I just want to get your quick thoughts on that, and then we can jump in to some of the matchups this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, well, when you look at the last couple of years, Clemson has been, the best or one of the best college football teams in the world. So to think that they're number 1 this year, it doesn't seem too shocking. They have one of the best quarterbacks in the nation. They have one of the best head coaches. I don't know as much of how much other depth they have. I usually start kind of focusing on college football like the day before it starts. I'm not usually preparing for college football as much just because there's so much turnover every single year. It's hard to, get into it. With the NFL, you got a lot of the same players on each team for 5-10 years, so you can kind of get into it a little more and predict a little bit more. But so that's why I think they're number 1. I think you look at Alabama, who's number 2 consensusly in most of the other rankings. They have a great quarterback. They have a great coach. They have great history, great wide receiver as well. So I just think, when you look at Clemson, they're number 1. But all it takes is one loss, Jared. We know this. All it takes is one loss. And with the addition of the only 4-team playoff, you can be number 1 to start the season, but it all doesn't matter once you get on the field and start. These rankings are just based on the players you have, essentially. So,
exactly.
Once we get into the real part of the season, you get these big matchups. That's when we'll find out who the real number 1 team is.
Right, and I want to pose to you a question, something that we've discussed many times on this show. I'm looking at Alabama's schedule this year, and Nick Saban, in an earlier press conference in the offseason, said that he would like to have his full slate of schedules for the year be against top-ranked opponents. Yeah. Basically do away with the cupcake games, because I feel like that has essentially been the one Achilles heel or the one complaint against Alabama is the fact that there's 2 to 3 games throughout the season where they're playing opponents that whether they're all Division I schools, but Southern Mississippi this year, they're starting off the year against Duke, which Duke obviously had Daniel Jones, but they're not really a formidable opponent. We're not going to see Duke in the national championship game. Week 2, they're against New Mexico State. Right, so I pose the question to you: do you agree, and do you think that Alabama should go to a slate of schedules where they're playing all worthy opponents, or are you okay with starting the first 1 or 2 games to play a cupcake in a sense, kind of get your team ready for the rest of the season?
Well, I'll take this question in 2 ways. One, as a fan of college football, of course I'd like to see them play higher profile games, because that would just mean bigger games to watch, more importance, more to talk about on this podcast, stuff like that. But looking at it and being fair toward Alabama, I actually respect a lot that they want a harder schedule. The thing is, though, they've proven year in and year out that they're one of the best teams in college football. And especially with their quarterback this year, you could schedule a couple tougher teams. I still think Alabama's going to end up with 1 loss or 0 losses when it comes to the end of the season. You just have to expect that from Alabama. So giving them these cupcake games, yes, it's disappointing because that's essentially 3 wins during the regular season. But again, they play Texas A&M, they play Tennessee, they play LSU, they play Auburn, they play Mississippi State. These are all great teams that, for say, the Pac-12. So, some of the Pac-12 teams aren't going to play a single team like that this year.
Right.
So, you look at it, and you got to give the respect for where respect is due for Alabama. They've won the championship. They've been in the championship. Anytime a team can win one of those Final Four teams, you got to give them respect. At that point, it doesn't really matter what they did during the regular season. If you can get to the national championship year in, year out, I don't have a problem with what your schedule is because you're winning a game against one of the top 4 teams in the nation every year.
Right, and I agree with you on this, and the reason I agree specifically with Alabama, not necessarily other teams, is the fact that Alabama is in the SEC, which is no doubt the toughest conference in all of college football. And with that being said, because basically every single week, whether you're playing LSU, Auburn, Florida, Tennessee, all of these programs are so large and have such great talent that it is a battle. It's a dogfight week to week, right? No offense, I'm sorry, but the Pac-12 is not what the SEC is. Not even the ACC, in my opinion, or the Big 12 or the Big 10.
Yeah.
No one matches the SEC. So I think for Alabama and some of these other schools in this conference, they're saying, hey, our schedule, playing 6 or 7 hard opponents is basically like playing in another conference where that other conference or that other team, those other teams are playing a full slate of hard games. So I think for Alabama, yes, as a fan, I would love to see them have a full, tough schedule the entire way through. But because they are in the SEC and they do have a tough conference or a tough schedule ahead, I'm okay with them starting off week 1 or week 2 with a cupcake in a sense.
Yeah, and everybody does that. I mean, even high school teams do that a lot. Like, you look at some of the best high school teams in the nation, because we get to watch some of them this year. I actually am wearing the hat of one of them today because my brother plays for the team. But, there's going to be those cupcake games. Everybody needs an easy week, right? It happens in the NFL mostly. Like, sometimes, although there's not, you don't intentionally schedule and there's madness to it. When you're watching, for say, your Cowboys and the Giants come up to play, you're like, okay, that's going to be a win. Like, if you won a bunch in a row against good teams and you look and you see the Giants are coming up, you're like, okay, good, that's another win. Like,
right. So here's the thing, though. In the NFL, teams don't get to pick their schedules.
No, they don't.
There's obviously people who are paid to make an NFL
it's
schedule.
a bad example, yes.
In college football, it's not like these coaches and these teams specifically get to pick when they play teams, but they can go to another school program and say, hey, we want to play a home and away with you. So it's a little easier to schedule that. Just very quickly, the Cowboys got very fortunate playing the Giants week 1 because the Giants are without their 3 top receivers because of injury and or suspension. So
they were going to suck.
They were, but in college it is a little easier to create your own schedule if you are a head coach and format, the games in order that
and when you look at it, a lot of this scheduling comes 4 or 5 years prior as well.
Right.
So when Alabama does schedule New Mexico, if they get lucky and New Mexico's a ranked team and all of a sudden is amazing when they play them, that's just what happens. But I think when you look at it historically, a team like New Mexico, they don't want to pay. I'm just picking a random team here. I don't even know if they play them.
They do.
They do, yeah.
New Mexico State.
That's what I thought. New Mexico State, so I was close. But New Mexico State has never really been a good team. So when Alabama schedules them, that's a cupcake game, right? If you schedule Hawaii, that's a cupcake game. If you schedule, Eastern Carolina, that's a cupcake game, right? So what I do want Alabama to do is not play any Division II teams, because I think, not to say that there's always the chance of an upset against a team like Alabama, but at least if you're playing a Division I team, there's always that chance that maybe there's that superstar player that can get you a win. They might have a good quarterback, something like that. I think when you schedule a D2 team a lot, besides it being like North Dakota State, that's where I get a little angry, because that is like...
It's not fair.
Well, that's like a high school team scheduling against an 8-man football. It's just not...
It's not fair.
It's not fair. So that's where I get a little irritated with Alabama and Clemson and all these teams when they do that. But nonetheless, I'm okay with it because they always show out at the end of the year. And there may be those couple years where they end up 10-2 and they end up losing the Sugar Bowl, something like that. But it happens so often that they're unbelievable and that they win championships. it's okay to have those easy games.
All right, and last question before we move on to the NBA. Just looking at the AP Top 25 right now, Nick, is there anyone on this list or any team on this list that you think can, challenge Alabama, challenge Clemson? Because really, in the last couple of years, it's really been those two teams that have been a top dog, and everyone else. Obviously, Georgia's been very formidable. Ohio State and Oklahoma are good teams, but do you see any surprises this year or any team that can really challenge the throne?
Absolutely. I think you look at the first 5 teams, it's Clemson, Alabama, Georgia, Oklahoma, Ohio State. I think all of those teams have a chance to potentially win the national championships this year. Even moving down the line, you have LSU. They get a big win against Alabama that vaults them ahead.
Hey, LSU's got that new, $3 million locker room. They got TVs in every locker and everything. Who knows? Maybe that motivates them and maybe that helps them.
Or distracts them before the game.
One of the two. One of the two. Not
but
sure.
You also have Michigan. Florida's been rejuvenated over the last couple of years. Notre Dame has always been a tough team, and then you have a vault of Pac-12 teams that maybe can come out of nowhere. So yeah, I absolutely think there's a challenge to the crown. If I had to predict, I'm going to end up going with the teams with the big-time quarterbacks, and that is Clemson, Alabama, and Georgia. Oklahoma has Jalen Hurts. I don't actually put him in the rankings with those 3 at the top. So I think a lot of times, when you look at these rankings as well, especially the AP, it is based on who has a quarterback and stuff, and you can see that reflected in the rankings right here.
Last 2 Heisman Trophy winners came out of Florida. Same system. Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, or Oklahoma. Yeah. I'm sorry. Same system.
But here's the Jalen Hurts is not that type of quarterback.
There's some that are saying he can be better because he's a better runner and he can still throw. I'm not saying I'm just saying.
I disagree with that though. I think you look at Kyler Murray, you look at Baker Mayfield. Those guys are, in my opinion, better than Jalen Hurts and more NFL qualified.
Okay.
And I just think that when you look at the number 1 pick next year, it's probably not going to be a guy from Oklahoma. But no, I'm a big Oklahoma fan. My brother's good friends with their tight ends, so I can't get too. I'm not going to sit here and shoot on Oklahoma too much. But I just think if you're looking at the 3 teams with their 3 quarterbacks, it's Georgia, Alabama, Clemson. I think those are the 3 that you kind of have to look at as the title favorites. Ohio State has a good quarterback, but he's a freshman.
Right. Trevor Lawrence was a freshman last year as well.
That's a good point. Yeah. This is why we do a podcast. This is why I don't sit here in front of a camera and do it by myself, because he brings up a good point, right? So it's eventually these freshmen are going to stop having to be so good.
I think they're only going to get better. I think it's the complete opposite.
Well, I told you, we talked about the number 1 quarterback recruit that's going to Clemson next year. DJ, I'm not going to say his last name because I'll butcher it and disrespect his Samoan family. But this quarterback from St. John Bosco, who's the number 1 recruit, he's another guy I think could jump right in there. I think Trevor Lawrence obviously will be playing, so that won't happen. But I do think you're right. These freshman quarterbacks are good, but I'm not going to pick a freshman quarterback over unbelievable sophomores and juniors.
Yeah, so I'm not either. And if there's 2 teams that I think can either dethrone Clemson and Alabama for that top spot, it would be Georgia. That's right behind them with Jake Fromm.
Yeah.
Georgia's defense is elite. You obviously have Jake Fromm coming back for another year.
Too, yeah.
I think that is the next most complete team. And I think they're correctly ranked at number 3. And then I'm actually going to put Ohio State right there at number 4. Listen, Oklahoma, you have Jalen Hurts there. Obviously, the last 2 Heisman Trophy winners. You have a great coach. You have a great staff. The defense, in my opinion, is still until I see otherwise, I think that defense is the Achilles heel. Last year, the defense couldn't stop a nosebleed. He gave up over close to 40 points a game. And I understand that they brought in new players, and the talk is that the defense has improved and gotten better. But in reality, throughout the regular season, most of the regular season, when you're going through opponents, they're most likely going to be able to win the games. But when you get up against an Alabama or a Clemson or even an Ohio State, an elite team with not only elite players, but an elite quarterback and great head coaches, I think that's where Oklahoma will struggle. So I've got Clemson, Alabama, Georgia, and Ohio State as the 4 teams that I think will contend for the national championship.
Yeah, no, I agree. You look at Oklahoma, and although I kind of I stated that Jalen Hurts might not be the quarterback of quality of the top 3, I think it's more their defense. Like you were saying, that would be the reason they probably wouldn't end up being national champion, and eventually Lincoln Riley needs to figure that out and stop with the Big 12 mentality, because that doesn't win championships. It just doesn't.
Right.
Clemson, Alabama, Georgia, they always have great defense. So, but the two games coming up this Saturday, one of the reasons we're talking about college football today, there are two games. One of them to open up the season, Saturday, August 24th, Florida versus Miami. Maybe not the type of game that you would have expected 20 years ago, but it's still number 8, Florida. It's a neutral site. It's in Orlando against Miami. You never know what could happen in those big-time rivalry games. And the other game, Arizona and Hawaii. I think that more just giving Arizona a chance to go all the way to Hawaii and then come all the way back. So those are the two games this weekend. So obviously, I'll try to be watching those.
Listen, football is back. All right, it doesn't matter what level it is.
And high school football is all starting this week here in California. Yes. So that's big. Like I said, my brother's playing. Hey, my brother's actually playing in Hawaii this week. So that's big time football games happening, and it's going to be exciting every single week when we do this to be recapping and talk about so much of what goes on.
That's right. So we're going to move on right now to the NBA, and specifically with the Lakers. And the beginning of the offseason, the Lakers made some big moves. Obviously acquired Anthony Davis in a huge trade, sending away a lot of their young prospects. And they also acquired in free agency DeMarcus Cousins. And obviously that is a huge name. But the last couple of years, he's been dealing with some major injuries. But when the Lakers first signed him, the thought was that he was going to be a major piece of this team and help hopefully bring in the Lakers back to championship form. Well, unfortunately, in a workout a few weeks ago, DeMarcus Cousins tore his ACL, and he will be out for the entire 2019 season. Brutal. So with that being said, the Lakers are now kind of looking for a backup plan. The reports are that they're going to bring in Dwight Howard and Joakim Noah for workouts to see if they can, be a solid piece as center positions. Anthony Davis has already stated that he doesn't want to play the center position. There's a lot of thumping and banging going around, and he wants to be able to preserve his body for the entire year. So, Nick, I will ask you first, and then I'll take this over. Do you think that Dwight Howard and or Joakim Noah would be good fits for this Lakers team, or do you think they should look elsewhere for a replacement?
Well, it's tough because you never expect to lose a player at this point in the season, which is none. There's no. It's just a random injury that happened.
It was in a practice, in a workout, and
So they already have JaVale McGee, who has been a center of a title-winning team before in the Golden State Warriors. I think the center position is a little bit less valued today. We know this than it was, say, even 7-8 years ago, right? So I think just getting a body in here is essentially the most important thing because they don't have another center on the roster. Like you're mentioning, Anthony Davis doesn't want to play center, although I think he will end up being the quote-unquote 5 in the lineup sometimes. He's not going to play the center position. So I do think that Dwight Howard or Joakim Noah would fit well simply because they need a body. And someone like Dwight Howard, who obviously he has the history with the Lakers, and I think Lakers fans need to get over that because I get it. He did, kind of not play his best, but he injured his back, right? There was a couple reasons why he didn't end up panning out the way he did.
A few.
Yeah. He also, the GM shouldn't have traded so many draft picks for him, but nonetheless, for a 1-year rental. So bringing a guy like Dwight Howard back in to potentially be the starting center, that, it's still a pretty formidable lineup, right? You still have LeBron James at point guard, say that so many times, Danny Green, Kyle Kuzma, Anthony Davis, and then Dwight Howard in the starting lineup. That's just as good, maybe a little bit worse than DeMarcus Cousins in the lineup, to be honest.
Hey, 5 years ago, if you would have told me this lineup, obviously Kyle Kuzma, wasn't in the NBA at that time, but if you would have said LeBron James, Anthony Davis, and Dwight Howard all in the same lineup, I would have looked at you and said, "Are you kidding me? I don't care what it costs. Trade everybody."
Yeah.
Here's the thing: Dwight Howard obviously left many fans with sour taste in their mouth when he did leave the organization, and he did say that he came back too early from that back injury. He felt the pressure of the Lakers organization and wanted to come back and prove that he was worth, trading for. And I think he rushed his injury and came back too soon, and he was not the player that the Lakers thought he would be. We obviously saw that by his play. I think here's the thing. He's not the player he used to be. He's a little bit older, but a motivated player with the height and the physical skills that he has, you can't teach that. So I think Dwight Howard has grown up. Earlier in the offseason, he was being interviewed, and he said, I realized the mistakes that I made, and the fact that Kobe was challenging me every day and saying that I sucked and calling me all these names, and I don't think he could handle it back then. I think now he's starting to realize that he's in a different time in his life, in his career, and it's not about making money anymore. It's about winning championships. And so if he can hone that in, right, and be hungry and be willing to sacrifice for the team and know that he's not going to be the main piece, I think it could, potentially work. It really depends on Dwight Howard's mindset and what he's really looking for. A name that I'm going to throw out is Ken Freed. Now, he is more of a power forward type, not necessarily a center, doesn't really have the height, but he is hungry, he gets rebounds, he does all the dirty work for you, and he's relatively cheap compared to what Dwight Howard would cost. I think Kenneth Freed is the player that the Lakers should be eyeing. I haven't really heard any reports about them, being interested in him, but who knows? But I think he would be, I think you need those players on your team, a guy that can do the dirty work, a guy that can guard the low post, he can get offensive and defensive rebounds. He does all the little things that I'm not saying LeBron James and Anthony Davis won't do, but you need one of those guys that can get their fingers dirty and do the tough work to make LeBron James and Anthony Davis look like the superstars that they are. So, and who knows? Anthony Davis will be playing some five.
Yeah,
I think what will happen is the Golden State Warriors kind of came up with this analogy of the death lineup where they had Draymond Green playing the five and they went very small. I can see the Lakers doing that same thing where you have Anthony Davis at the five in certain situations. LeBron James obviously going to be playing the point guard position, and they kind of just go with a smaller lineup to get faster and quicker.
Of course, no, and basketball is turning into a positionless game, to be honest. So we're not even going to be talking about fours and fives in a couple of years. And we probably don't even have to talk about it right now, to be honest, because when we're looking at it, you look at the Lakers roster. If LeBron James is playing point guard, the only guys over 7 feet tall, or even close to 7 feet tall, are Anthony Davis and JaVale McGee. The rest of the guys on the roster, Jared Dudley, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Avery Bradley, Rajon Rondo, Quinn Cook,
You're looking at
Alex Caruso.
You're looking at 6'2" to 6'8".
Exactly. You have Antetokounmpo's brother, who I don't know if he's had any success in the NBA, period. So I'm not even going to name, I named him, but I'm not going to put him as a legitimate thing. So you do just like I'm saying, you need a body. You need a tall guy. And Dwight Howard will absolutely work as that tall guy. Joakim Noah will work as that tall guy. You don't need some superstar center to come in here. The DeMarcus Cousins thing didn't work. Injuries happen. It happens every year in football. It happens a lot of times in baseball with pitchers. We just saw Chris Sale is going to be out for the season for the Red Sox. So sometimes you lose those key players. But you have to fix it in the proper way. And I think if the Lakers go about it as not picking up Dwight Howard because of the past, I think it's a little ridiculous. And then I think people are going to be kind of questioning, what this team is really thinking about when you're looking at signing players and stuff like that. So,
last thing about this, I wanted to get your opinion. I'm going to say it first. There's many people out there, reporters and just fans, that think that with the loss of DeMarcus Cousins, the Lakers now do not necessarily have a direct path to winning the NBA Finals, even though they still have LeBron James and Anthony Davis. Yeah. I disagree. Obviously, DeMarcus Cousins would have been a huge help to that team and would have been able to spell the stars.
It's definitely a loss. Yeah.
But I think the Lakers are still in great contention as long as they can stay healthy. Listen, you can't teach what LeBron James and Anthony Davis have, and I think they will only uplift their own players and make Kyle Kuzma and the rest of that team better. So I think the Lakers still have a great opportunity to make, obviously not only playoffs, but the finals. It's just now a little bit tougher.
I'll tell you this, Jared. You know who's excited about this? Montrezl Harrell with the Clippers. Montrezl Harrell's going to eat up the Lakers centers now. I got to say. Oh, absolutely. Because he's the guy that bangs down in the post, and Cousins would go at him with that. I don't think JaVale McGee or a Dwight Howard. I do think Joakim Noah will bring the physicality. But when you're looking at the type of player, Montrezl Harrell is a fringe all-star. Joakim Noah is way past his prime. So it's not, But I do. So I do think there's a mismatch now when you look at certain teams with certain centers in the West. But no, they are absolutely still contenders for the NBA Finals. If they were to lose an Anthony Davis or Kyle Kuzma, I think that would be a little more important. And obviously losing LeBron would be important too. But I think Lakers are fine. Lakers are fine, but let's keep the injuries to a minimum here. If you get a couple other guys, it's going to end up like last year, where a lot of the depth starts to get lost, and then you start to lose games, and you're not seeded well, and stuff like that. So they do need to hold the major injuries to a minimum here with DeMarcus Cousins.
Right. Well, I'm glad you brought up Montrezl Harrell, because I think he is a very close comparison to Kenneth Faried.
Yeah,
Kenneth Faried is a little bit older, but the guy can still play, and they're the same type of players. They're not going to really wow you with their points necessarily or their stats, but they do a lot of the dirty work, and they are key contributors to helping their teams win. So the Lakers, like I said, if they can get that type of player, a guy that's gritty like that, I think that will go a long way in helping this team get back to the NBA Finals.
100%.
Yeah, so now we are going to move on to our last segment. Somewhat of a rapid fire, not do you care like many of you know, but some questions going, a lot of things going on in the NFL. We're coming up on week 3 of the preseason, the quote-unquote tune-up week, where you'll see many starters play at least a full half. This will be most likely the last games that the starters will play until the regular season.
These are the last. Yeah. That's why we're happy that college football is starting next weekend, because next weekend, the weekend of the 30th, was my birthday weekend, by the way. That's essentially the preseason games. They're all played on Thursday, and they all kind of don't matter.
Exactly.
So it's good in college football. It does a good job every year of always starting on that final preseason week.
So with that being said, Nick, you get the first crack at it.
Okay.
The New England Patriots, and specifically Tom Brady, they just got a huge boost and a big target that Tom Brady now gets to throw to, a former player who has been in and out of the league. When he's healthy and on the field, he is a Pro Bowl caliber player. Unfortunately, he has been suspended multiple times. Roger Goodell in the NFL just reinstated him last week. The player is
Josh Gordon.
Yes, sir.
Josh Gordon. Yeah, this is very random that this came out of nowhere. I have Josh Gordon on one of my fantasy teams for a keeper league, so I'm happy that he came back, because I was just going to have to release him more than likely. But
there's a win.
I don't know why he's reinstated. He failed another drug test. I like to call Josh Gordon the John Jones of the NFL, because he seems to get in a lot more trouble than everybody else, but he also seems to still be able to play and dominate. So, good for the Patriots. Not good for any fans of the NFL that don't want to see the Patriots win and be in another Super Bowl. This is also good for the Patriots, because they kind of been dealing with some injuries to N'Keal Carey, their first-round pick. Obviously, you have Julian Edelman still on the team, but the wide receiver depth wasn't amazing for the Patriots, and it was going to be a little more difficult for them this season, as far as in the passing game. So getting Josh Gordon back, I'm sure he's been working out. His last failed drug test wasn't something crazy either, so he's still in tip-top shape. It will just be him and Tom just rejuvenating their relationship, but nonetheless, I'm happy to see Josh Gordon back in the league for many reasons, but I do wonder this again, like why the NFL even suspended him indefinitely. It's still weird to me, the whole Josh Gordon saga with the NFL.
I do want to kind of harp on this. I know these questions that we're asking each other usually is just going to be either myself answering it or Nick, but I think the Cowboys have a player on their roster, and Randy Gregory, who is going through a similar situation, who's been suspended by the NFL multiple times for repeated substance abuse. And the Cowboys have chosen to stick with Randy Gregory, just like the Patriots have chosen to stick with Josh Gordon. I believe, and I think that these teams believe, that these players aren't dealing with issues to where they love getting high, or they love that it's an actual addiction that they're dealing with, and this is like a real life situation. And here's the thing. There's been many instances where players have been suspended for substance abuse and then cut by their teams and thrown on the streets. That's not necessarily good for those players because guess what? What are they more than likely going to do? Just revert back to their old ways and their drug use.
Exactly, and not every player ends up like Waller from the Raiders that we saw in Hard Knocks, who had severe substance. Like the stories, he was getting high every single day.
Anything he could get his hands on.
They had that amazing video of Harbaugh kind of harping on him and wondering what was wrong with him and all that stuff. And now look, he's probably going to be, tight end 1, tight end 2 for the Oakland Raiders, and gets featured on Hard Knocks as a guy that was able to fix himself. But like you're saying, not everybody is like that.
Exactly. No, they're not. But what I'm saying is, for the Patriots being able to stick with Josh Gordon, with the Cowboys being able to stick with Randy Gregory, they're able to help him along this process and give him what he needs. I know that Randy Gregory the Cowboys have a specific guy that kind of is working with Randy Gregory on a 24/7 basis, constantly checking in with him, constantly helping him with whatever he needs. So when you have that support, I feel like that is a big factor in why Roger Goodell and the NFL are reinstating these players, because when you just throw them out on the street and say, figure it out on your own, a lot of times guys don't necessarily have that support or know what to do. So I think it's great. I hope that Josh Gordon can keep his nose clean, because like I said, if he can and he has his head on straight, he is no doubt one of the top 10 best wide receivers in the NFL. You cannot teach his height, his speed, or his athleticism. And I guarantee you that Tom Brady is very, very happy and excited to have his top receiver back.
Yes, no, of course. So moving on here, here's mine. I'm winging these off the top of my head, these little guesses. So bear with me if I screw up the entire thing. I am a somewhat unproven quarterback that was injured last year that had one of the worst preseason performances of a quarterback this preseason. Jared, who am I?
Were you talking about Antonio Brown?
No, so you guessed wrong.
Ooh, I guessed wrong.
Yeah, quarterback.
We're talking about a quarterback.
Oh, all
right.
See, he was trying to guess before. He wasn't even listening to the whole thing.
Right.
Unbelievable.
Jimmy G. Yeah, Jimmy G did. He had one completion?
No, it wasn't good.
No, it wasn't good. I believe that he, in the practice leading up to this game last week, he had 5 interceptions on 5 straight attempts.
I forgot about that part.
Yeah, that's not good.
Yeah,
Here's the thing. He's coming off a nasty ACL injury.
It's not an excuse to throw 5 interceptions.
No, it's not. But what I'm saying is I think he's still working his way back.
Yes.
This is really his first real off season where he's been able to practice and get to know this offense. So he's a great talent, and this 49ers team actually has talent that can surround him this year. Obviously, George Kittle is their best receiver at tight end. But I think it's just going to take time for this team to gel. So I say this about preseason. I don't think you can ever over-exaggerate or vice versa with any player or any team, whether they look good or bad, because preseason games are very vanilla. A lot of times you're trying to see if your man can beat another man. A lot of this is just straight up mano-a-mano. You're not going to see a lot of crazy blitzes and crazy schemes going on. You're trying to keep everything vanilla for the regular season. So I'm going to give Jimmy G the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to say, he needs to knock the rust off.
Yeah.
If he continues to play like this for a couple more weeks, because he will be playing in this next game, the tune-up game in week 3 of the preseason. If he comes out and he doesn't improve, then I think you can, you might have something to kind of talk about. But let's pump the brakes a little bit. It was his first live action in almost a year. So I'm going to give Jimmy G the benefit of the doubt. Nick, next question.
By the way, I think we screwed up our order.
It's okay. It's all good. Hey, we're going to roll with it, because
Yeah.
that's what we do on this show. So, Nick, this next one is for you.
Okay.
This is actually, I can't say that. This is a rookie player. Number 1 draft pick.
Okay.
Right. Was featured on Hard Knocks. And not only him, but the entire offense got wrecked by their opposing team.
You don't got to say that. I know it.
They got wrecked, and their head coach, first-year head coach, came out and said, "We're not showing anything. Calm down, relax. We are also waiting for week 1 of the regular season to unveil our entire offense." offense I am talking about.
You were talking about Kyler Murray, Cliff Kingsbury, in the Arizona Cardinals.
Yes, sir.
Of course, we had to slip a Cardinals question in here, but it's somewhat news, and it was news to see what happened with Kyler Murray in his first real game action. Week 1, he played a drive, looked good, but a lot of open receivers and stuff like that. This was a test, though, because it seems like the Raiders want to win the preseason Super Bowl, so they decided to go really hard on this past Thursday, which I don't think the Cardinals were expecting or cared about this past Thursday. The thing I came out with the Kyler Murray stuff is, yes, they're only running a couple plays, so I don't really care about the fact that they were down by a lot, because I think the Raiders are kind of throwing a lot more on the table than some other teams. Whether that be for Hard Knocks or not, I don't know. But what really kind of concerned me was the penalty calls on Kyler Murray, and it was his claps. They were calling a lot of false starts on him. I get it's the preseason, so maybe the referees are just saying, hey, there's going to be some referees that are going to call this, so you got to watch it. I thought it was severe overkill. Most of the time, I didn't think Kyler Murray was going. I didn't see anything on any of the plays, and I was trying to be unbiased about it too. So I don't know what this is. I get that the NFL maybe wants to try to dock some of the quarterbacks in some way because it's such a quarterback league now. But I thought it was kind of ridiculous, and I think the referees need to figure out. And if a guy is clapping once, and that's his thing, and he claps once, and there's no snap, and then he claps again, that's just like saying hut 1, hut 2. I don't see that being. The offense doesn't have to allow the defense to jump start the play.
No, I think what the NFL was saying is it's one thing to clap your hands like this. It's another thing to jerk your body and.
But most of those plays he wasn't. I mean, he's doing this as a way to clap. It's like does he have to clap like this, like a nutcracker? Like it's getting they're nitpicking a little too much. I think they're attacking the Cardinals and the Kyler Murray in this offense.
You have to think about it. The NFL has not seen this type of offense of system yet, so I think they're also trying to figure out how best to officiate this. Right? All other teams in the NFL, their quarterbacks call a specific cadence. Yeah. There is no clapping like you see now in basically all of college football. So. Not to say that it won't work, or not to say that the Cardinals cannot do it, but I think these referees maybe weren't prepared for it and are trying to figure out the best way to keep things even and fair.
Yeah, no, it just seemed like they were really nitpicking, and they kind of destroyed the flow for any Cardinals offense. Again, it's preseason, but when you're only running a couple plays and then you're moving them back 10 yards each time because Murray's slightly moving his shoulders on some plays, like a just normal, like human nature, that the way he's clapping. I just hope that's not going to happen in the regular season unless it's obvious. I hope they don't nitpick that much, because it will cost the Cardinals some games, because you have a whole offensive play, you have 1 second on the clock, and then you clap, and it looks like a false start, and the ref, it's just going to be a little ridiculous. And I get that we haven't seen this in the NFL, but do your research. There's billions of dollars in this company. Figure out how to referee the team. You know what I'm saying? There's going to be some advantages with other teams to not. Let's not destroy the Cardinals' advantages right off the bat, especially for a team that was last.
Cardinals already have enough on their plate.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Jared. Let's see if I don't do one to screw you up on this one. Don't know why I closed the app. Okay, here, this is an easy one. Jared. I am a Dallas Cowboys player that we have referenced on this podcast before that finally got his money. Who am I?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's not Dak Prescott.
No,
it's not Amari Cooper.
No, it's not.
And it's not Ezekiel Elliott.
No, it's not.
But this is actually, all joking aside, this is a great signing for the Cowboys. Extension signing for Jaylon Smith.
Yeah.
The linebacker who they took 3 years ago in the second round. When he came out, or when he was coming out of Notre Dame, he was going to be a top 10 pick. He was one of the best players, no doubt. Unfortunately, in the Fiesta Bowl, in the bowl game for Notre Dame, he severely not only tore his ACL, multiple other ligaments in his leg, and there was nerve damage. Many people didn't think that he would ever come back and play football again. He's obviously persevered. The Cowboys took a chance on him, and both sides were able to come out on top of this. So congratulations to Jaylon Smith. He got $65 million, $35 million guaranteed. He is, I believe, the third highest paid linebacker in the NFL now, up and coming, and very, very well deserved for him. So nothing but great things for him. I think there's a lot of people that are saying, well, wait a minute, Jerry Jones in this Cowboys organization, you have your top 3 players that I just mentioned that you still have to take care of. Why are you skipping over them and taking care of Jaylon Smith? And listen, I don't necessarily blame the Cowboys in this sense, because I think Dak and Amari Cooper they're in camp, they're working, and they're saying, listen, these guys are here, we're going to get a deal done. Ezekiel Elliott is not there right now, and it seems like he feels like he should be paid first. The Cowboys cannot sit and wait for the contract negotiations for those players to come in and then, take care of the rest of the players. They have to say, at a certain point, we have to get our other players taken care of. I'm going to use a specific example, and I know it doesn't specifically correlate, but it somewhat does. With the Lakers, when they were waiting for Kawhi Leonard, right? There were many other great free agents, Patrick Beverley, JJ Redick, a host of other players that the Lakers were potentially looking at, but they couldn't go out and spend that money because they were waiting to see if Kawhi Leonard was going to come.
No, yeah.
The Cowboys are kind of in a similar situation right now, even though Ezekiel Elliott is holding out, to where they are waiting for Ezekiel Elliott and his camp to accept an offer. The Cowboys can't sit and wait forever. They still have an organization and a team to run, and they also have other players they need to sign. So they're saying, okay, eventually, if you don't want to come to the table and negotiate, we're going to have to move on to our other players, and that's just going to mean less of the pie for Ezekiel Elliott to eat off of. So I'm very happy for Jaylon Smith, and I think that the negativity that's going on in the Cowboys front office right now needs to stop, because the Cowboys can't just sit there and twiddle their thumbs. They have other players. Byron Jones still needs a contract extension along with the other big 3. So, the Cowboys have to take care of their players. There's so many guys, and it's a very unique, unusual situation, but that's where the Cowboys are, and they have to take care of their players. They can't just sit and wait on Zeke.
So. No, 100%. And I do think they should pay Zeke next, because he's the one that's saying, I'm not playing this season. Dak and Amari Cooper will play this season. I think they're just saying, hey, give us the respect when you offer us a deal. I may not accept it right now, but, come negotiations, I'm still going to be asked for the same money. So I do think that we will see Ezekiel Elliott get paid next. I don't know when that's going to be. I don't know when that's going to be. I'm not even confident that it's going to even happen before week 1. But he will be the next guy that gets paid.
Don't say that.
He will.
It better.
Jared, I'm just saying, look what happened to Le'Veon Bell last year, right? Like it's not totally out of it.
It better be before week 1. All right. Okay. Next, you are up, Nick.
Is it my
this is the. I'm asking you. This is the last question for you. I am a receiver. This is the first year with my new team. I have a whole new system. I am featured on Hard Knocks, and unfortunately right now it's for all the wrong reasons. I have practiced with my team, but I have injured feet, and I also am dealing with a helmet issue. Very, very tough. I just gave you all the clues. Nick, who are we talking about?
You started that off, and I'll give you some tips. What you should have said, because I know who the next player is going to be, is that my team was featured on Hard Knocks in the last 2 years. Was that when they gave it away right away?
Very true.
But this is, of course, our boy, the biggest diva in the NFL, Antonio Brown. Now, this has been such an interesting story because we've heard, it's his helmet. He's offering fans like money for helmets. Like,
apparently.
It's crazy. His feet are still not fixed. He shows up to camp. Apparently, we see on Hard Knocks in retrospect. The team still loves him. Gruden's behind him. Then the next day, Mike Mayock comes out and says, we're essentially moving on from AB if he doesn't want to play for the team.
Well, he said either he's all in or he's all out.
No, exactly. And then yesterday, we get reports that helmets went on, AB left, and then we get reports that he did practice that day. So here's the thing. Antonio Brown will be playing for the Raiders week 1. Yes, it might be frustrating to fans and their organization that he's not going to gel with his teammates during the preseason. You can even see that on Hard Knocks, and if you haven't seen it, go watch it. It is really educational about the whole thing. His teammates still like him. They still treat him really good. But it does seem like he's kind of an outsider. Like, he shows up and everybody's, AB's here, yay, like, cool, you actually showed up to practice once. And then he leaves the next day and everyone's like, oh, well, AB's not here, who cares? Like, so he'll play week 1 with a new helmet or with an old helmet or with an illegal helmet, I don't know.
Or with no helmet. No,
yeah,
he won't do that.
The Jason Witten style, right?
Yeah.
But, yeah, so I do think he'll play week 1, and I do think the shenanigans will stop after this week. I think, you got the Hard Knocks ratings out of the way. I get it. It's whatever. But, the biggest diva in the NFL will be there week 1, and I'm sure he'll go for like 200 yards and have 2 touchdowns. And everyone will be like, what was that stuff in the offseason?
Yeah, he better, man.
Guys, preseason doesn't matter. Preseason might matter for Ezekiel Elliott because he's not playing. But it doesn't matter for these type of guys.
I hope not.
Yeah. So, Jared, last question. I'm another wide receiver that's on a new team this season. I like to tear apart my old team for no reason. I could also be in contention for biggest diva in the NFL. Jared.
I say that about a lot of receivers.
Jared, who am I?
You would be Odell Beckham.
Oh, of course. Odell Beckham.
Yeah. New team, new city. Not by his own choice. He was traded from the New York Giants to the Cleveland Browns and came out earlier this week and had some interesting comments on the entire trade. And listen, I think at this point, the fact that he's still being asked those questions and the fact that he has to answer them is kind of ridiculous. Listen, move past it. You're on a new team. Reporters ask him about the team that he's on. But he was nonetheless still asked about the whole experience and how he's gelling with the new team and how he's getting along. And it seems like he's still hurt by the entire situation, saying that the New York Giants did not trade me here for my own interest. They traded me here to die, quote unquote. Very strong words by Odell. And obviously I don't think they want Odell Beckham Jr. to die. But listen, here's the thing. On the field, he is arguably one of the best receivers in the league. Off the field, while he has not done anything illegally, he still has been a headache as far as doing typical things receivers do. Arguing and wanting the football more, getting into fights on the field, and obviously his off the field life. There's reports that after a game on Sundays, he would fly out to LA. A lot of times teams have Monday off, and then he would fly back to New York Tuesday. There's obviously nothing wrong with that as long as he was back and on time. Yeah. But obviously, I think it's people in the Giants organization weren't necessarily too happy about him just picking up and going to LA and partying for a day or two. So here's the thing: Cleveland is not New York. Cleveland is not LA. Oh. There's not much to do in Cleveland other than play football. And I think Odell Beckham Jr. was referring to the fact that there's not much, nightlife or outside distractions in Cleveland as opposed to a bigger city like New York. So who knows? Maybe this is a good thing for Odell. Maybe he can hone in a little bit more on football and focus more. Not to say that he doesn't, but maybe the outside distractions will, suffice and leave him behind. And maybe he will help lead the Cleveland Browns to the playoffs. Maybe. And speaking of that, I'm going to leave you with that cliffhanger because next week we are having an NFL predictions show. So tune in. Let us know what your favorite team, and we're going to be talking about all 32 teams going from division to division and in playoffs, telling you who we think will win divisions, who we think will get in as wild cards, our entire predictions for the NFL right before week 1 of the regular season starts.
Yeah, no, it's going to be a big show next week. By the way, if you are a usual contributor to the show, hit us up. If you want to join us, the more the better. It's going to be a fun show, and we're going to try that. We might split it up into two, an NFC portion and an AFC portion, but nonetheless, I do think that it's going to be fun, and it's always one of our favorite shows to do. Every single year, we have the draft show that we do. We have the NFL predictions show, and we did the MLB predictions show last year with our boy Alex Silva too, which I thought was pretty fun. So,
that's right. So stay tuned for that. That'll be a little bit of a longer show, but if you are a fan of the NFL and you want some predictions, this is a show to come to. So, but for this week's show, we are finished. We hope you enjoyed it. We had a lot of different topics to talk about. Obviously, college football starting this week. the whole saga with the Lakers and who should replace DeMarcus Cousins, and obviously some more news from the NFL. But for this week's show, we are finished. Thank you for joining us. I'm Jared Smith.
I'm Nenad.
And this has been the Cover 2 Podcast. See you next week.